said, Tim Duncan came into the league. He was already a first team All NBA guy. That's something historically rare to do. It's very, very rare that you see somebody that came into the league that made first team All NBA. It was top five in MVP voters that made all defensive team at his rookie year. One rookie of the year, peaking at almost a quadruple double. Never played with a player of a caliber like Shaq. Never missed the playoffs in his prime as well because he was the consistency of winning as well. Historically, one of the greatest two-way players of all time. Tim Duncan has accomplishment that I don't think nobody in the NBA will break. Because if you do that, you will have to come into the league performing at an elite level defensively, and then when you already out of your prime, still perform at all these defensive heights. Tim Duncan at the age of 38, 39 made all defensive team as well. Had some of the best runs that we had. On top of that, we forget the fact in 03, he had one of the greatest playoff runs in 03, beating Kobe and Shaq, then going ahead and beat the team as well. They knocked them off as well. So, yes, bro.
Can I argue Kobe real quick? Because you mentioned Tim Duncan coming to the league being this defensive great player, which he was, but he also had David Robinson next to him, which made his job much easier. When you're playing next to David Robinson, an elite defensive big, it makes your job easier. And then you talk about Tim Duncan beating the Lakers in 2003. Well, look at Kobe and Tim Duncan's head-to-head matchups in the postseason. Kobe outshines him. Kobe outdoes him in the postseason when it counts the most. You mentioned 1 year in 03. I can mention more than 1 year when Kobe killed Tim Duncan and was the best player on the court versus Tim Duncan. So what are you saying, bro? What are you saying?
Let me go. Hold on. Let me go rebuttal your talking points.
Go ahead, bro.
You sit there and say that Tim Duncan had David Robinson. David Robinson was nowhere near the same caliber as he was as a player when he was in his prime and his peak as well. And you talk about David Robinson made his job easier. That's fair, but it's not comparable to Kobe Bryant having Shaquille O'Neal, who is one of the most dominant players in NBA history. The fact that him touching the ball literally have to put 3 or 4 guys on him because how unstoppable he is in the post, in the paint as well. So you don't talk about how his impact, his gravity as well, made Kobe Bryant's job way easier. And on top of that, you can make an argument that Kobe Bryant's peak as an all-around player was in 03 with Shaq. So when you mention head-to-head matchups don't make you the better basketball player, right? Because we have seen Larry Bird.
Well, I find it funny that Mookie goes to.
Hold on. Why you cutting me off? I'll let you talk.
My bad. Go ahead, bro.
Because if you do the head-to-head matchups, it puts you in a slippery slope because you have Kobe Bryant over LeBron James, but if you look at the head-to-head matchups, LeBron James have a winning record over Kobe Bryant. You have Michael Jordan over Larry Bird, but if you looked at the head-to-head matchups, Larry Bird has a winning record over Michael Jordan. I just don't look at head-to-head matchups.
Yeah, that's not the end-all be-all. I agree.
It's not the end-all be-all. Yeah. So when I'm looking at Tim Duncan, when I'm looking at 03, when I'm looking at 05 as well, right? When I'm looking at 99, where he's basically had rookie players and a David Robinson, who was well above out of his prime, nowhere near the same player as well, and who's been a model of consistency, never missing the playoffs, performing at all defensive heights, even when he was entering out his prime as well. He's one of the best rim protectors, one of the best post defenders as well, and then a quadruple double in the NBA Finals as well. Picking at that, bro, he's better than Kobe.
All right. Well, okay. Well, I find it funny that you keep mentioning Shaquille O'Neal, but then you tend to forget the second back-to-back Lakers again, 08, 09, and 010. And not to mention the Spurs from 07 to 2013 didn't get back to the finals. Everybody thought when Kobe Bryant was on the Lakers from 05, 06 when Shaq left that he couldn't get back to the mountaintop. He got back to the finals 3 years later and got to the finals 3 straight years. The Spurs swept the Cavaliers in 07. That same Spurs team played the Lakers the very next year. Kobe beat them in 5 games, averaged like 34, 7, and 8 versus that same Spurs team. That was easy work. You know what I'm saying? And again, bro, if Tim Duncan is – and listen, he's great. I know he's great. But for Tim Duncan and the Spurs with Greg Popovich to never repeat back-to-back champs, that's a knock on him. And then you mentioned David Robinson. Before David Robinson broke his leg in 1998 because in 96, Because remember, the Spurs got Tim because David broke his leg, and the Spurs just flat out tanked the season. The Spurs were in the Western Conference Finals 2 years before that. So it's not like Tim went to like this bad team. Like, I mean, he was drafted to a pretty damn good team. And again, I know head to head is not the end all be all, but when we have these type of arguments, it does play a role, you know what I'm saying? Because now we're nitpicking. And again, we can argue Tim or Kobe. I'm cool either way. I'm taking Kobe, but if you want Tim, I'm not gonna fight you on it. That's all I'm saying.
I'm gonna disagree with the point of you sitting there saying that before like Tim Duncan was there, because I think a lot of your arguments without any context as well. I think we got to put into context that yes, they was in the Western Conference Finals, but the better player, which I believe Tim Duncan was the better player than David Robinson, was able to propel them to winning a championship, even when David Robinson left Tim Duncan as well with the young second year in the league, Manu Ginobili and very, very young Tony Parker as well. Tim Duncan was still able to propel them to win a championship, have a deep postseason run, was what had an all-time great defensive peak defensively in those playoff runs, and when he was matched up with no player of a caliber like a Kobe Bryant or Shaquille O'Neal by his side, he was able to beat a prime Kobe and a prime Shaq, bro, in the postseason, outplayed him and got game 5 and game 6 as well. So you mentioned how, yes, Tim Duncan went on a year where he was in the drought of not making the finals and stuff like that, but you still not ignoring the fact that the Spurs, he was injured when he was an AC as well. Knowing the fact that injuries did play a part of them not actually making the deep postseason runs, and the roster that they had was somewhat inadequate as well. So yeah, bro, if you putting all that to perspective, I'm taking Tim Duncan because Tim Duncan was better start from finish, bro. He came into the league was better, and going as a rookie year did something that Kobe Bryant did, and he was more of a established player. Something that it's very, very rare. Usually when you look at all-time great players, the fact that it takes damn near 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4 years to be that player that we know they can be in a prime, their peak. No, Tim Duncan came into the league and it was already dominating the league. And he did that by winning his 5th championship, even when he was a role player, the impact that he was still giving to that San Antonio Spurs team, anchoring some of the best defensive units in NBA history. Can't say the same thing for Kobe Bryant as well. So that's why I will always favor Tim Duncan over Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, situations matter. Situations matter, fellas. I mean, listen. I mean, Tim went to a team.
Hold on. Situations matter. So you telling me that?
Yeah, they matter. Of course, they matter. Kobe went to a team that Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones, who was coached by Del Harris, who did not believe in playing 18-year-old kids. Because at that time, guys like KG and T-Mac, they weren't starting. They weren't playing heavy minutes, right? I mean, maybe KG was because KG went to a team in Minnesota who just had nobody. But my point is this, though. We all know that Kobe Bryant was ready to go when he was 18 years old. But unfortunately, he went to a team that was already somewhat stacked. If Kobe goes to the Hornets and he don't get traded to the Lakers, bro, he's playing big minutes and he's putting up big numbers his rookie season. It's just that he didn't get a chance to do it because he went to the Lakers and not the Spurs. And again, I'm going to say this again, and then we can end this shit, bro. I'm okay with Tim or Kobe. Like, I'm not going to say, listen, I mean, we're nitpicking here. I'm a huge, listen, I got Tim and Kobe in my top 5. MJ, Kareem, Kobe, Tim, Magic. That's my top 5. So I'm nitpicking here. I mean, listen, I'm cool with either one for me.